have a legend, an actual legend here today. Will, come on up. Give it up for Will West. So you really are like a Silicon Slopes legend. You built, I mean, how many companies you built? 10?
Legend. I think that means old. So yeah, I don't know how many companies, but
And Control4 was that your first company you did, or?
no, that was actually one of the reasons for the four. Is it was the fourth home automation company my partner and I had started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every overnight success takes a couple of decades, just so you know.
Yes. So everyone in here, or for the most part, everyone in here is part of Start School, trying to figure out how do you build in this new age of AI and automation and everything else that's going on. Were you starting a company today? How would you do it? How would you approach it?
Well, first of all, I am sort of starting a company today. I have a company that I consider still in the startup stage. And by the way, retirement, so I'm going to back up a little bit. You should ask yourselves why you're interested in being an entrepreneur, right? What is it that's actually driving you? Is it the financial well-being that you perceive? Is it the freedom that you think you get? You should, you're owned by your company much more than you own the company when you start a company. Give that some thought. One of the things I wanted to achieve was the ability to retire comfortably, hopefully early. And I actually tried that, and it's not that great. I lasted, I think, 3 months before I was starting another company. So give some real thought to, whether or not the whole thing makes sense. But if I were to start a company today, I would try and be expert first in something, right? Don't, if you dive in thinking that this is a cool area, it's interesting, I'd like to learn about it, it's going to be just a really expensive way for you to get educated. It's and probably not a success for you or the investors, if there are any. Try and become an expert in something. Doesn't really matter what it is. There are opportunities everywhere, but get good at it.
How are you using AI right now?
Well, so my company, most of my companies that I have started with a partner named Eric Smith. Some of you may know him. He gets around a lot more than I do. So, in fact, you probably know him better than you know me. But we have started many companies together. They have mostly been in the home automation space, and I can't imagine being in the space that I'm in and not thinking AI, aside from everything it's going to do to the rest of our lives, being game-changing. I haven't done this for a few months, but I used to kind of regularly ask the various LLMs what's the most important way we will interact with AI? Where will that be? How will it be? And the home is like number one or number two. It's right up there. Home, the car, the office, and we do the home. We make the home smart, and we can't do that without getting deeply involved in AI. And similarly, I would suggest AI needs us, because you can't have an AI-driven home and not have the ability to say, hey, whatever, turn on the lights, or I want to wake up in the morning with the lights ramping up over 30 minutes and the shades coming up and the temperature adjusting and all these things right around my wake up time, right? You should be able to do that, and the home should be able to respond. So AI and my world are sort of inextricably linked. I think we will all be able to say that, but it is definitely true in home automation.
Okay, my last question for you, and then remember, wait for the microphone because we're recording this so that we can put it up in the Stark School space. My last question for you, so make sure we get a mic, someone from the team, Dave. How would you think about raising money in this environment? Were you to start right now?
So my very first entrepreneurial venture, not including the sweatshirt, t-shirt venture that I had, in my first year in college, my first, I would say, real venture, we bootstrapped. We used credit cards. We used loans from friends and family. And that's really painful. That's really scary. That's scarier than venture money, for sure. But if you can do it and make that successful, that's a pretty sweet way to do it. I think at one point, this was back probably 15 years ago or 20 years ago. I think I had raised 10% of all venture capital in the state of Utah. So I've been around the block a lot, right? And it is good, bad, and ugly. And everybody's heard scary stories about venture capital. I could talk about, that's all we could talk about the rest of the time is scary stories about raising venture capital. I actually don't think most of you guys are going to have to depend on venture capital the way traditionally we've had to, because the ability to create now is so much higher than it has ever been. I'd lean hard into the bootstrapping approach if you can get there. I don't know if I answered this question.
Sure. All right, let's do it. Read it ahead.
Hi, you had said that you would become an expert in whatever you were hoping to start a business in.
Yeah.
One thing that I was impressed by at Summit was that Mark Cuban, who hasn't really had much healthcare experience except like a little foray in 2019 with the Affordable Care thing he did, but he spoke so knowledgeably and he had no formal training. I mean, maybe. Who knows what he's doing on his personal time. My question is, how would you measure when you are enough of an expert in a field to that, okay, I feel confident I could go do a startup? Does that mean traditional education, boot camps? What's in your mind when you say expert?
So you don't have to get a formal education to be an expert, right? I ski with an interesting group of people. One of those guys got Lou Gehrig disease, and he... in the first year, he said he read 44,000 pages of sort of PhD material on the subject. And doctors from around the world were calling him in the second year to get information about, the results and because he started blogging about what he was doing for himself. You definitely don't need a formal education. I was advised not to get a formal education. I worked at a money management firm downtown Salt Lake, and the guy that ran that had a PhD, and I was going off to get an MBA at one of the expensive schools, and he told me not to. I did anyway, because I sort of you're a PhD, you're telling me not to get an education. Yeah, Personally, I couldn't care less what your degree is in or where you got it. I care what you know, right? And you should care the same thing. And I think I don't even remember people asking me ever where I got a degree or what my degree is in all the money that I have raised. Now, maybe, they look me up on LinkedIn or something, but still, I just don't think that's important. What's important is becoming an expert, and that doesn't take very long in today's world. In an afternoon, you can learn and get yourself into a position of being able to have a good conversation with a college professor just by having a conversation with ChatGPT. It is so easy to get to that point now. There's not a, get a 7 and then you're an expert, but be able to talk to somebody in a way that sounds dangerous. The important thing actually isn't that. The important thing is know it well enough that you know where the gaps are, right? And then slide into that gap.
Thank you. All right. When you're in the early stages of a new venture, what decision gates do you personally require before you commit meaningful time or capital? And are there specific signals you look for before going all in?
Yeah. Sadly, I'm sort of a leap before you look kind of guy, to some extent. I had a great job at a brand name company. You all have their products in your home. I got a raise the day I quit, and I had an opportunity to do something entrepreneurial. And I took 48 hours to make the decision, but I really, really, really wanted to work for myself. And so it didn't take a lot to sort of push me over that edge. But if you desire to work for yourself and you think, okay, I need to become an expert to a certain level, and then I need these 5 things to be in place, that I think that's a great way to do it. It's not how I have ever done it. Mostly, actually, once I found the right partner, it was a series of conversations with him, and momentum would build between the two of us. And, sometimes it took weeks or even months. I would even say years. And sometimes it took an afternoon for us to agree that this had all the components that we needed from a market opportunity, our skill set, resources available to us, that all the pieces were in place to go out. And we were naive and optimistic. And by the way, if you're not, please do something else. Really, because there isn't a formula for what makes you successful as an entrepreneur. If you read the literature, I think what you'll learn is that the difference between success and failure that is common across, look at those people on the wall in there, the board members of Silicon Slopes. The difference between them and the rest of us is they didn't stop. They didn't give up. I promise in every case, the world told them, no, you can't. That's not going to work. And they did it anyway. But it usually took a lot more time than it looked like from the outside. That's really the key characteristic. It's not your brains. It's not, a particular talent. It's don't give up, even when the world says it won't work.
What was your biggest mistake?
Oh. How do I begin to count? I'm going to answer that maybe a little differently. The mistake I don't want to make anymore in my life is having people around me that I don't like working with and admire and, consider to be good people. And I have had people around me that don't check those boxes, and it's rough, whether they're in the company or investors. So I had an investor who said, I'm not very tall, but when I stand on my wallet, I'm 7 feet tall, right? And that was sort of part of the introduction to him at the time. Really needed money, and he did look 7 feet tall, but it was sort of how he defined himself. He was an investment banker by background. He had learned to live kind of in a very cutthroat kind of world, didn't care about people. At Control4, we actually had an offer to buy the company. I'm going way off, probably anything you wanted to know, but we had an offer to buy the company from Intel. At the time, Intel was at the top of their game, and the offer was a good offer. And I knew, and Intel knew, that I was going to come back with a counter offer, and they were willing to go much higher. At the same time, Cisco was interested. Bidding war between Intel and Cisco at the time was a very happy thing, right? Had we taken the initial offer, we would have made roughly 3 times what we made actually taking the company public, which was good, by the way. It was, it's not like we, had some terrible, our IPO was more than 10x oversubscribed. So, the initial foray was good, but we had this investor on the board whose fund had not done well. We were the sort of jewel of the portfolio, and the rest of the fund had kind of crumbled. And if they lost us, they would no longer have the hooks into the LPs to continue getting their fees. And his personal salary was about $1 million a year, and he didn't want to lose that $1 million a year. And he had lost so much money on everything else that there was going to be no carry. Does that make sense? So there was going to be no return for the investors, no matter how much they made on us, right? And so his only hope was that we didn't sell, that we sort of dragged things out for many more years so he could continue making his salary. Nobody else on the board understood that dynamic at the time. And he was the only investment banker on the board, and he sort of pounded the table and said, I need to lead this deal. And the board said, yeah, that makes sense. You've done more deals than all of us combined. That makes sense. After the board meeting, he came to me and he said, Will, your only answer to Intel is no. Period. You can't say anything other than that. And I said, well, I mean, they're gonna want some direction, right? They're gonna want to have some guidance about what do they do, with this offer to make it attractive. He said, no, I've done so many deals. You're going to get the best price if you just say no. There is no negotiation. It's just no. So I called Intel, and they were flabbergasted, right? They did not understand. I said, I am only authorized to tell you no. And they said, we're not going to negotiate against ourselves, and the deal went away. And so this board member accomplished exactly what he wanted to accomplish. And we lost, something really great. Nobody else on the board had that level of low ethics. But I have had other board members who fit into that category. And I've also worked with people who are people I aspire to be like. So that's what I would like to avoid. Sorry, way too long on the answer there.
I got back here. Hi, Will. Jeff Hansen. I started a AI club fitting platform. So if you're a golfer, it's
an AI which platform?
Golf club fitting platform. Oh. So we stream TrackMan data. So I actually interviewed with you a long time ago for VP of marketing job at Control4. So I do. I didn't get the job, so I'm good. Interested from your perspective on platforms. Obviously, Control4 was built the platform capabilities based on relationships with installers and that. So in your year 1 to 3, as you looked at the things that you prioritized in building a platform, did you focus first on the ability to get integrators to really adopt it, or were you focused more on the consumer experience itself that then led to the adoption by the integrator?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think becoming a platform, however you define it, it's a way overused term. For us, what it meant was that our dealers, and we had thousands of dealers in the U.S. and like 14,000 around the globe, our focus was being so important in their lives that they had to sell us every week and every month to pay the bills. So we knew we had into the tens of thousands of people getting up every day, and their purpose in life was to sell our stuff, which meant we had to be important to them. To, as I think about becoming a platform, that's what that was the greatest magic sauce at Control4. It wasn't our light switches or our thermostats or anything else that we built. It wasn't the things that we actually sold. It was what we became in relevance to the dealers. Did that address it? And by the way, I used to be a golfer. I guess I still sort of am. We currently provide all the technology for Topgolf. And lately, that's about as close as I get to golf. I used to have a membership at the club near my house, but I love Lake Powell and spend every minute I can during the summer there. And so I found myself spending like close to $5,000 a round, and figured this was maybe not a wise membership to have. So I haven't done a lot of golfing since then.
So you mentioned you started multiple businesses with the same partner. I'm curious what the secret is. Like, why do you still like each other? What boundaries do you have for the roles that you each played? Do those roles shift with each company?
Yeah. So Eric Smith, I don't know if you must know him. I mean, he gets around, right? And if you think he's a wild man now, just imagine him when he was 20. He and I don't mean, he's full of energy. Maybe that's a better way to describe it. Eric's amazing, super smart. He was like this boy wonder when we first started working together. He's the only guy I know that you can be on a 14-hour flight to Asia. He will talk the entire time, and you won't be bored when you land. He's got so much to say, and it's so interesting, and he's so intelligent. We don't actually hang out outside of work. We spend plenty of time together at work, and probably both feel like a break outside of that is good. But I respect him. He's truly a good person. He's very intelligent. He's good at what he does. He handles the tech stuff, the hard stuff, right? I handle all the sort of business mechanics and things that I think are much more manageable. But our skills complement each other well, but we also, I think, like and respect each other. There's someone up front who has been raising her hand.
Oh. Is it okay if I go?
Yeah.
Hi, Will. I'm Mars.
Oh.
Mars Communications. I'm a technology broker. It's so nice to meet you. So I'm curious about your exit strategy. So you went through 5 businesses. Did your exit strategy change each time? Or is there one that you always go to?
The always go to is no exit strategy. You build a great company, and the exit strategy will take care of itself. And I think you kind of have to, because every business change, at least for me, every business changes so much from conception to exit. the first non-home automation company we did was a company called Ibon, or it changed names a couple of times, but Ibon is the name you're probably not old enough, but might have known at some point. But we put broadband in all the hotels around the world, all the major business class hotels. For our company, it was just dial-up, which none of you even have heard of, I think. But, you used to get this dial tone with your computer, and it would make all these funny noises and eventually connect, and you'd maybe, if you were lucky, get a 1200 baud connection. That's like 1.2K, right? Very slow. We sold a company called Fast, P-H-A-S-T, and we had non-competes. And so we couldn't compete in the home automation space for a while. We went to start, we thought, well, what are we going to do now? We had made some good money, not enough to last us the rest of our lives. And so we thought, what's next? And we thought, well, we can automate things in the commercial space and not breach our non-compete. So we thought, we traveled a lot as part of work. And you'd go into hotels at the time, and they'd have these old dial Mercury thermostats, right? And the technology in hotels was non-existent, basically. So we thought, let's go automate a suite next to Marriott headquarters. And we rented the suite for a week, and we decked it out. Everything was awesome, right? The shades, what happened on the TV, the temperature, lighting, audio. It was a fantastic experience. So we brought all the execs over from Marriott and kind of, shuttled them through in a demo. They loved it. They thought, this is cool. And they had no interest in paying for it because they figured they were getting every dime they could out of the business traveler. And that was, their sweet spot. But we had this little box on the desk. It was a little black box. Plastic generic box. It was the high-speed internet box, and you could plug Ethernet into it. Well, this box was the only thing in the room that was non-functional. We had glued a power cord on the back. We put lead weights inside and glued a couple of RJ45 connectors into the back. That was it.
Right.
It's what everybody wanted. The automation stuff's cool. It won't help us get more money from our hotel guests, but that's cool. Can you do that for us? And, what do you think our answer was? Sure. Of course. The technology didn't exist to provide it, but of course we can do it. See, at the time, DSL wasn't a thing. So the question is, how do you get broadband up to the room? The hotel we were in didn't even have broadband for their systems, right? Broadband, pretty new thing at the time. So they actually had a partial T1 to the hotel. So we said, sure, we'll compete. And then they said, okay, that's great. We're testing in 40 hotels. We have 9 competitors. The other competitors are AT&T, and they listed them off, all multi-billion multinational companies, and there was the 4 of us in our company, and we had 6 months to solve the technology problems for getting high speed, and Wi-Fi was just sort of a twinkle in someone's eye at that point. So we had to figure out, how do you get broadband up into every room? The only wiring that went to hotel rooms at the time, it was bundles. In most hotels, it was bundles of 50 strands of wire, and at each they'd go straight up above every set of rooms, and they'd peel off 2 wires for the phone at each level. There was no twisting of the pairs. It was just wires going up. And we had to get high-speed data to every room. To make a long story short, we did it, and we won. We got the Marriott contract, the biggest hotel chain in the world with thousands of hotels. And from there, we went on to, win all the other major brands, and we were flying high, And we were talking to investment bankers in New York when the dot-com bubble burst. Again, before most of your time, but this was bad, right? Everything, it was like you probably all heard of the tulip crisis in the Netherlands, a long time ago. This was like this, right? Everything internet was fabulous, and then all of a sudden, if it had internet associated with it, it was the plague, and no one wanted anything to do with it. Very shortly after that, 9/11 happened. 9/11, where there was no travel for 3 or 4 months, right? Zero. Our business, and by the way, we were spending at the time $12 million a month of our cash rolling solutions to the hotels all around the world, and we were contractually obligated to keep doing that, right? But there was no revenue, and there was no ability to raise capital. So, make a long story short, we decided we got a year to turn this into a profitable telecom company, which we did, and then we went out and found someone who, on paper, looked absolutely golden based on his, great resume, to sell us as a telecom company to one of the big carriers. And he was not the golden goose, I will just say. The board also made some mistakes. We had some offers in the hundreds of millions, and the board, I didn't feel this way, but the board felt like we could get more. And I almost bought the company out of bankruptcy for $15 million. I was outbid by a competitor in the space who bought it for $16 million, with $60 million in revenue at the time out of the bankruptcy. But that ended very badly, but it started. So, you never really know how that ending place is going to be, but even the happy ending places are not necessarily the same as you expect them to be, right? We have an offer for our company right now that whether or not it happens, I don't know, but we certainly did not expect it. And we aren't thinking about the exit. We know that if we build a valuable company, whether we get bought or we need to take it public to realize the value, it doesn't really matter. Actually, if I had my choice, I wouldn't choose the public. I didn't done that. It's really fun, right? The whole Wall Street thing and that's really the roadshow. It's all really fun until then you're public. That's not so fun.
Yeah, thank you. Excuse me. So I'm building an education company, and a core part of our model is going to be outcomes-based contracting. So in other words, revenue tied to producing outcomes for student learning. Not all the revenue, but a portion of. And I'm curious to know.
So are you talking to Sorensen Impact?
So
that seems like right now.
Exactly. Outcomes-based contract. I think that's part of the Sorensen Center, right? They are doing some of that work.
Yeah, I mean, they're all about impact investing. They love. I know Jim loves education-related plays, inner cities, and that's what I don't.
Well, then no, I'm not having that conversation, but would love to. But I'm curious to learn from you if you've built or invested in companies where you were promising outcomes rather than just time or usage. It was about outcomes and what you would recommend. If that's a high priority to me because education matters, but more importantly is getting outcomes for kids.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what advice you have.
Yeah, the short answer is no, I haven't done that. I would love to be in a business that had that kind of meaning. I think that's it's very cool. And I would encourage you to talk to the Sorensen Group, not Sorensen Capital. I'm talking about Jim Sorensen and his impact efforts. But I have promised results, and at Ibon, we put our money where our mouth is. We were rolling out these systems to hotels, but then we owned the revenue, and we shared it with the hotel, and that was a great model until it wasn't. Internet usage was, going like this, and we got $10 a night when people used it in the hotel room. Business travelers pretty universally used it. They could expense it. So we were counting on results, but outcomes that are sort of good for the closest I've come to that is trying to work with utilities, Control4 to drive what's called rate driven behaviors on the part of customers, and I wasted $25 million on that. So I wouldn't go after a deal with utilities again. I will tell you that. So no, I don't really have education related or goodness related experience.
Oh,
Hey, Will, I'm Rick. You spoke a little bit about Eric, who was your partner on multiple things, and
Still is.
piggybacking on those things. How important do you think it is to partner versus going it alone? And what kind of advice would you have? Where do you find, and how do you know, besides just they complement, the things that you're lacking?
Other than being a consultant, I'm not sure what, Clinton doesn't go it alone. Nobody that I know, there's no such thing, right? And so, the question is, what are you good at, and how do you need to fill in the gaps around you, and are they good people? Do you want to be like them, right? But how you analyze your weaknesses, I don't know the answer to that, but I think the sooner you are, see as an entrepreneur, you've got to be so arrogant to think that you can accomplish something that the world hasn't been able to do, and that most of the world is telling you can't, and you're going to do it anyway, right? So you got to be arrogant, but you also are going to be far more successful if you are simultaneously humble enough to recognize what you're bad at, and that's most things probably. So I don't have a good answer. I'm sorry, I don't have a process for analyzing myself, but I'm old enough that I have a pretty good sense of what I'm not good at, which is most things.
Let's go, Cynthia.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Cynthia Gamble with Sapria. You briefly discussed one of your board members in not so much of a positive light. Now I would like to know, what is the profile of your ideal board member? And that goes across the board, not only in his ethics or lack of it, but on his background, experience, years in the business, in the community, how much he knows the community. What are the priorities that you use to select a board member? Yeah,
that's a really interesting question. Actually, I'm going to be extremely specific in my answer. The guy that I have found to be on every board, there's always for me been someone that's my kind of go-to. There's somebody that I trust, that I can say, here, let me lay it out for you. Here are the problems that we're dealing with, and I get that feedback. But the individual guy that I value the most from a board perspective right now is a guy named Dan Strong. And I should have had you all sign NDAs first, because he's busy. Don't bother calling him. I don't want him to be distracted, but he was our CFO at Control4. And he took us public. He went on to help two more companies get ready to go public. In both cases, the second company went from a $75 million value to $1.5 billion in the few years that he was the CFO. He's now retired, but he and I are close friends. I respect him, and he gives me zero BS. He tells it exactly like it is. He's on a couple of boards of companies that I am, have some responsibility for, and I'm most scared of what he's going to ask, because I know he's going to ask the hard questions, but they're not going to be hard for the sake of hard. They're going to be hard because he looks at the numbers and he drills down to what's important. And when he has a problem with something, if we don't answer it well and he thinks we're not right in that space, he's right. He is. I can trust that where he has concerns, I should be concerned. Boards are not going to run your business. They are not going to get you the customers you need. And smart money is, and I apologize. I have some investors that I love, right? They do not help me, right? They don't. It's your job to run the company. You got to make it happen. But board members, just having a board meeting is super useful just for the discipline of the company, right? Getting ready for it. But the board members who just want the company to be better won't be afraid about, Dan's got nothing, sort of no dog in the hood. He's going to ask the questions because they need to be asked, whether we think it's good that he asked or not. And that is so healthy for us. And we're very close friends because it's not personal, right? He knows me well enough to trust me, and it's not personal. It's just about the quality and status of the business. Does that?
Yes.
Hey, well, you've started a lot of different companies. Can you talk to us a little bit about, in the beginning, when you're going from kind of that vision and you're putting in the right people, the right relationships, getting the right capabilities to, in that genesis that will end up being able to scale to a full, successful company? What's been your thought process in putting all that together?
Yeah, that's directionally like a question I think I didn't answer very well earlier, and I'm not going to answer it very well again. So I've pretty much always started from nothing in a company like Brown. We need to, register the company, start from nothing, and almost always I've started with Eric, right? And so it's always been a collaborative, bouncing things back and forth between him and myself. He knows I've got part of the company covered. I know he's got part of the company covered. If you actually have his function and my function well covered, you can go a long way before you have critical gaps that you have to fill, right? So if you can find that one person to start with, that is sort of the yin to your yang, I consider myself deeply fortunate to have found Eric, because he's really smart. He's really creative. He's always been the CTO at all of our companies, but he's so much more than a CTO. He's a unique technical brain. By the way, we talked about, I talked about degrees earlier, but he didn't get his degree until he was like 45. Because what was the point? All right? The company wasn't going to pay him more just because he finished his degree. He got it just because he wanted to, and it felt good to have a degree, but he didn't add any more value to the company before or after that. Find someone who's smart, someone that you can trust, someone who will work. I remember at one of our early board meetings at FAST, I think he had slept 6 hours for the entire week leading up to the board meeting. He fell asleep in the middle of a presentation to the board. It was hilarious, but the board meeting went well, and we got this incredible demo put together thanks to his and many other people's tireless work. He's a guy who will do whatever it takes, right? And you want to surround yourself by that. The idea, in fact, that's more important than the idea. Real estate's location, and starting a business, it's people. If I were an investor, and I'd rather invest in an A team with a B- idea than a B+ team with an A+ idea. Again, not very specific answer as to how to do it, but
I will. Chad Pexton. Curious your thoughts on competition, like what you had said earlier about you have to have kind of the audacity to try to solve a problem that the world says you can't solve. It feels like now, like everybody's solving everything. I mean, we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of it's hard to have a unique idea, I think. And I'm thinking back to what John last week, was using really simple analogies to talk about building a business. And one of them was talking with his friends about who's a good pool person in Utah. And like, there isn't one. Nobody could think of one. So I'm just curious, like, I don't know if Control4 had a lot of competition. I mean, we see the first in challenge with even someone like OpenAI, compared to Anthropic. And so there's always that component, but how have you viewed competition? Has it always had to be first entry, new idea, or we're going to do something better, unique?
Yeah. So competition, I would generally say the competition doesn't matter. Go back to Ibon. Our competitors were 8 other multinational, multi-billion-dollar companies. AT&T already had the data contract to every hotel, every single hotel in the Marriott chain, right? Not to mention their research labs to solve all the problems, right? We came in with 4 guys, and in 6 months we won. And in home automation, there's little companies like Amazon and Google, and Amazon lost $5 billion a year for a few years in their Alexa group, right? They have spent serious cash trying to, play in the space, and they have played in the space, right? And I personally have many, Echo devices around my house. Love them. But they don't do what we do. They're not going to solve the problem that we're solving. And that's really the question that you have to answer. Do you have a unique play, unique way into the market, something? But I don't care how big the biggest companies on the planet have competed against my companies. And that has not been a factor in our success or failure in that process.
When you mentioned Ibon, you said, long story short, in 6 months, we beat out AT&T and all these huge other companies. Are there a few key points that you could talk to that maybe apply to all businesses of how did you do that? What did you do?
Yeah, so they gave us 3 of the 42 hotels. They gave us 3. At the first one, we said, can we have the first one be the downtown Marriott in Salt Lake? And they said, sure, we'll make that one. Then we'll do the JW Marriott in DC, right? Flagship hotel right near their headquarters. And then another flagship hotel, I think it was the JW Marriott in Houston. But they let us start with the Marriott in Salt Lake. And it was a disaster. I mean, the infrastructure in that hotel was the worst. And so, we had 6 months. like right up against the deadline, we went down to install this hotel, and we had a week to install it. And the management said, do not screw up our guest experience, right? We want you into the room and out when the guest's not there. Do not interrupt people at all. So we had a team of about 5 people racing around the hotel, installing. We had stuff at the head end we had to install in the basement, and stuff in every room. There had to be a CPE device, a DSL. I don't even know if you guys know what DSL is, but an internet box in every room, and we got them deployed. We were literally building these boxes in the basement as we were deploying them. There was no testing, right? We just got the chips in time, just were deploying, and got them deployed. And, to no one's surprise, there was a massive amount of crosstalk on the wires. When you don't twist wires, it's bad with data, is the bottom line. And so it just didn't work. And so on the fly in the basement of the hotel, we had guys coding and figuring out how to change hardware so that we could make this work. And it was a total cluster. I mean, we were going back and forth to rooms. We were in and out all the time in the guest rooms. But we were there 24/7. And we were communicating constantly with the management of the hotel. At the end of the install, they reported to Marriott headquarters and said that was the most seamless tech install we have ever had. And that, honestly, more than anything else that we did, that won a multi-thousand hotel contract that was worth, at the time, hundreds of millions. But yeah, it was we serviced them. It wasn't that we came in with better tech. We definitely didn't. We serviced the lights out.
Will, last question for you, and then come up here afterwards, everyone, and let them leave at some point. We talk a lot about if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others, and personal leadership at Start School. What does that mean to you? How do you think about personal leadership?
Yeah, so to me, it's so I ski with a group of people who are like they're like those people on the wall. They're incredible people. They one of them ran our last Olympics and will be running the next Olympics, and NFL, Pro Bowl, and CEOs, and comes private equity, and Olympic gold medalists, incredible people, and so we ski like crazy. We ski like 60 miles an hour. We do 20,000 vertical feet before lunch, and then we go back to this guy's house, and he asks some kind of life question, like, what have you learned from raising kids? Or this last time it was, describe a situation of intense grief and how did you get past it? And this testosterone-filled morning moves to this lunch experience where there are regularly tears around the lunch table. These people, they're good, right? They're good, and you've got to be good at what you do. But I want to be like them someday, right? And nothing else really matters. If you're good, if you do everything you can to be good at your job, whatever that job is, if it's the founder or CEO, there's a lot riding on you, but do a great job at your job, but more importantly, be good. These people have been good. They live lives of service right now, all of them. They've served all over the world in all kinds of capacities, and they are just, wealth will not make you happy. The data, you all should believe in data. The data says if you have enough to put food on the table and a roof over your head, beyond that, the extra dollars won't make a difference for your happiness. They won't. But what will make a difference is how you live your life. This group is called Fraser's Flyers, and there's a motto, and it is every day is a gift. Enrich relationships with kindness, and find ways to meaningfully serve others. Do those things. The rest will work itself out.
Give it up for Will. Thank you so much, my friend.